And welcome to a very special general election news round. We're live from outside the Houses of Parliament. I'm Ricky.
And I'm Hayley, and we're here on a really important day when we've news on the future of our country. Behind us is one of the most famous sites of London. It's the Houses of Parliament, right in the centre of the city. Now, it's been a pretty confusing day today, hasn't it? Not only weather-wise, sunny one minute, rainy the next, but also a lot of confusing faces around Westminster.
That's right, because yesterday, millions of adults right across the UK were voting in the general election. They were deciding the future on the country.
Now, overnight, all those votes were counted, and although the Prime Minister Theresa May, her party, the Conservatives, did get the most amount of votes, well, it wasn't quite as straightforward as that, was it?
It wasn't, as I've been finding out.
In a little over 12 hours' time, polling stations will open at the end of what's proved to be an unpredictable general election campaign.
Nothing has turned out as people expected.
Theresa May was Prime Minister yesterday and she's Prime Minister again today. So not much has changed, right? Well, not quite. Many people are describing this result as a huge shock. Now, Theresa May called the election, even though she didn't have to, expecting that she would have a big win. Instead, she couldn't win a clear victory. Her Conservative Party can only carry on by joining up with a smaller party. Well, there is Theresa May. She's leaving number 10 Downing Street. She's now on her way to talk to the Queen about trying to form a government. Theresa May is now back from Buckingham Palace. That means she will continue as the Prime Minister and carry on living here at number 10 Downing Street. Now, this was supposed to be her big winning moment, but instead she's now in real trouble for not getting the big win she said she was going for.
I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, and I will now form a government that can provide certainty and lead Britain forward at this critical time for our country.
Other politicians will be looking at Theresa May and asking how long she might be able to keep going on for. But she says she wants to stay as Prime Minister.
Well, we've been here all day and there are lots of tired faces wandering around Westminster, least of all Ricky's, because journalists and politicians have been up all night trying to get their head around this news.
That's right. So how are all these politicians feeling today? Well, there's only one way to find out. Bring on the emojis.
The big question is, who has won the general election? But it's not as simple as that. Let me explain. Theresa May's Conservatives have won the most seats, so you'd expect them to feel like this. But they feel like they've lost, as they have fewer people in Parliament than before. Jeremy Corbyn's Labour has come second, but they feel like they've won as their numbers have gone up. In Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon's SNP won more than any other Scottish party, but they also had a confusing night as they won a lot less than before. The Liberal Democrats are pleased as they won more seats than before. So who's in charge? Well, Theresa May is still the Prime Minister. To stay that way, she's had to make a deal with a smaller party from Northern Ireland called the DUP.
Well, loads of you have been asking questions about this general election news today. So with us now, we are joined by political reporter Mark Lebel. Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us. What a confusing night. What do you make of it?
Unbelievable. I had not known a time like this. With the American President Donald Trump being elected, that was a surprise. Us leaving the club of European countries, that was a surprise. And now with this confusion over the government, honestly, I'm baffled.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
So are children, I think, because they're asking us questions. First of all, we've got one from Catherine from Hampshire, because she wants to know, if the Conservatives have won the most seats, why have they not won?
That's because the country's divided into 650 regions. Each one chooses an MP. Now, then, that one party, a political party, needs half of those, 325 plus one, to form a government. But the Conservatives haven't quite managed that yet, so they can't form a government by themselves.
OK, we've got a question here now from Orin. Take a look at this.
How will the parties decide who to team up with to try and win this general election?
So what do you make of that?
Well, it's a good question. And what has to happen is that the same thing I was telling you about the numbers, the 326, they have to both have an amount that adds together to get over 326, but they also have to get on with each other so that when they're agreeing their to-do list, they have things in common.
That's where it gets quite tricky.
Exactly. So the Conservative Party has found a party in Northern Ireland called the Democratic Unionist Party, and they're about to do a deal.
Okay.
Fergus wants to know, what will happen to Brexit now?
Good question. About a year ago, this country voted to leave the club of 28 European countries of which it was a member. Now, this election was called in order to strengthen the Prime Minister's hand, because we've got to leave them and have a deal to leave, but also have a future deal for our relationship going forward. It didn't quite work like that, so we're actually in a weaker position, but those negotiations are still going to take place in 10 days' time, just not quite as the Prime Minister had planned.
In just 10 days' time. OK, Lena also has a question. Take a look.
What would happen if none of the parties wanted to join forces?
So she wants to know what would happen if none of the parties wanted to join forces?
That is a very good question, because that's very possible. They could agree things on an issue-by-issue basis, one at a time, but there are certain things that the government needs to pass, its big to-do list and its budgets, and if it doesn't get support on those, then it can't go forwards. But in order to entice the other parties for those crucial votes, they could maybe grab some of their policies and stuff them in the to-do list, and they can work together.
So a lot of questions, lots going on right now, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. So thank you for all those questions, guys. You at home as well, and thank you for joining us, Mark. You really did help
Nice one.
out.
Brilliant stuff. Well, that's all from us right here at the Houses of Parliament. We have been live throughout the day. I'm rather tired. But if you do want to find out any more about this election, don't forget you can head online to the Newsround website.
There's a quiz on there, and you can also see behind the scenes where Ricky's been working very hard finding out all the latest. And tune in tomorrow morning, because I'll have all the latest news for you then.
Have a good afternoon, and we'll see you really soon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.